And just, God, the closer I got on 81, the traffic was worse. And I just like, now I know why I live in the South, except for Atlanta now. It sucks.
Ah.
But it's just, that stress level just was up there.
Yeah. All right. Looks like we're about at time, so give me a second and we'll do the intro and everything.
Okay.
Okay. Just let me know when. Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Paranormal Encyclopedia. As you can see, your normal host, Kevin Mears, is currently a ghost. He is invisible, but he's right here. He sends his love. I am your co-host, Brian McKinley, author and godfather of vampire thrillers. And no, actually, Kevin is on his way in. He's just hit some traffic. But we are pleased and very thrilled in a vampire fanboy way to have with us Dacre Stoker as our guest. He is, of course, the great grandnephew of Bram Stoker, author of Dracula. So, without further ado, I'll let you introduce yourself, and you can tell people a little bit about who you are.
about growing up a Stoker.
Yeah, like, I mean, that's interesting. Like, how does that, when did you become aware of that?
Well, it's funny, Brian, you say that. It's obviously this dominated the last sort of 10 years of my life in a big way, but prior to that, as a kid growing up in Montreal, Canada, it really wasn't, something in the family. I mean, we were all aware. I've got two sisters and some cousins, and we were aware of the significance of Bram Stoker, particularly around Halloween. But to sort of put things in perspective for your listeners, it really wasn't until sort of the mid-'70s when two Boston College professors, McNally and Florescu, wrote a series of books, starting off about who this Vlad Dracula was, and then something called In Search of Dracula.
Yes.
These guys did something really interesting. They went down to Philadelphia to the Rosenbach Museum searching for a woodcut on Vlad the Impaler. And the curator sort of pulled off the shelves and said, look, if you're interested in this stuff, you might be interested. We happen to have these notes for Dracula here. These guys just about freaked because that's sort of like finding the Holy Grail if you're a Dracula fan. And they wrote a book, and it was that book that I read first. Before I actually read Dracula or anything else Bram wrote, I read In Search of Dracula, and it was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Obviously, lots of other people in the world are really interested in my, great granduncle. This is neat stuff. What's this all about? And so my dad said, well, son, at about the age of 12, and maybe I need to tell you about this. Like fathers do with family secrets. And,
time for the family curse.
Yeah, it's like dust off the coffin and brush off all the spiders and stuff and pull out all this old crap like we're the monsters or something. But it wasn't like that at all. It's like in this bookshelf, there's a few copies of first edition books that Bram had written, and somehow they made their way to our side of the family. My grandfather, great grandfather, is Bram's youngest brother. And so Bram, it turns out, because we've been tracking a lot of the books that Bram has signed and given to family members, and of course he signed these books and gave them to his youngest brother, to his mother, and somehow they then made their way to us. And that's the book that Dad said, here, you should read this. Now, little did I know at that time the value of a first edition Dracula signed by Bram to his mother and signed by one of his brothers, that I'm flipping through these pages as a 12-year-old kid trying to sort of look for some gore stuff or some sexy stuff. And it's like, this is not much. So I sort of put it down. Yeah. It wasn't captivating, and certainly, as many of your listeners would agree, it's not an easy read. No. I didn't pick it up and actually read the book for real and with purpose until I was in university and needed to do oral interpretation of literature project on an author. So it wasn't until about the age of 19 that I read Dracula, and that's kind of when I got it. it's a cool way to write a story. This epistolary style was not common in the time, and certainly isn't common to this day. And it's difficult. I mean, I don't know if you've read one, Brian, but it's
I've actually written
tough.
one. I wrote one. Sort of my first book, in a way, was a tribute in that where I used that same, not the exact same style with letters and whatnot, but I used a very similar style.
Well, it's hard to keep track of things, isn't it? I mean, it's like you've got to, it's just not like you're just not telling a story. You're telling the story through different people's ways of giving information, letters, journals, diaries, newspapers, and you've got to keep it all together. What's the message? What's the reader getting?
Yeah.
And
why would these people be writing this particular letter, or or this account? Yeah. It makes it. It's a unique challenge. I can definitely see that. Now, is it true that that Bram Stoker originally intended for Dracula to be a stage play?
That's one of Brian, there's a lot of what I call the mysteries behind the writing of Dracula, and based on the notes of Dracula, there's very little to go on when I say, this is what the experts say, the scholars say this. Bram didn't leave an autobiography. Bram gave one interview about Dracula. He wrote some things about himself, a lot more obviously about Henry Irving in a book called Personal Reminiscence of Henry Irving. Other than that, there's the Dracula typescript, the Dracula notes, and then this lost journal that I found in Bram's great-grandson's attic. Those are really the three things that give us hints about himself, his writing. And one of them is, did he intend this to be a stage play? Well, when you look at the notes that are housed in the Rosenbach and Philly, but also luckily have been published, you get an idea that he had these things in sort of acts and different phases. So it looks like at one time he did. The other part is more circumstantial evidence. If I was sort of approaching this as a literary detective, he was working as a theater manager. He loved the theater. His boss would have been the most amazing Dracula, Sir Henry Irving, who played Mephistopheles in Faust, the devil.
Yeah.
It all, Brian, it points towards Bram, using this to be able to adapt it. He even protected the stage rights just before the book was published by having a staged reading in the Lyceum Theater, purely as a way to protect the stage rights.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool because people have dug up copies of the script that the readers, I won't say actors, but the readers used on stage for this sort of eight-hour production.
Wow.
Purely for protection of the rights. So, yeah, he probably had that in the back of his mind. But, the cool thing is, or not so cool thing, he passed away. His wife actually helped get it on the stage. She collaborated with Hamilton Dean to get this thing on the stage. He collaborated with John Balderston, and it became a huge hit, which would then help sales of the books, and then it pushed it on down the train tracks to become a great movie, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, kind of became immortal with Lugosi and all of that.
Yeah, those guys really, literary aside, they brought life to this. They brought another look at it. People got to realize that the creature that Bram wrote about was a far cry from the way Lugosi was portrayed on stage as this suave, debonair Eastern European guy in a dinner jacket.
Exactly.
The purists read Dracula, and it's like he's more like a revenant zombie today.
Yeah.
The zombies that we write about, but not that cool, guy, welcome, that I want to suck your blood. That sort of guy. It's like, shit, Bram's guy would just rip your throat out and do whatever he wanted with you.
Yeah.
So it started that roll towards humanizing the vampire that is so popular today. They look like runway models, the hot chicks and guys, they look so different, but
and even,
you got to give
when
credit.
You see the classic, when somebody draws a cartoon of a vampire, 9 times out of 10, the vampire is going to be essentially Bela Lugosi. It's
Yeah,
going to be the guy in the
yeah.
dinner jacket with the cape and the slick back hair.
Now, I've heard this, Brian, about this cape, and tell me what you know about it,
Hmm.
that it was the stage prop, the high collar. I think David Scull wrote this in Hollywood Gothic, that to have the vampire sort of escape on stage, they did two things. They had this trap door,
Mm-hmm.
called sort of like the vampire door, and Lugosi would turn, and there would be these wires attached to the high cape that would hide his head, and he would sort of zip down or drop down in this door, trap door,
Yeah.
and then the cape would fall, and he'd be like, it looked like he just sort of evaporated.
Right.
Which,
turned into a bat.
Yeah, had you heard that before, or I'm just making
I've-
that up? I don't think so.
It sounds about right. A lot of the conventions surrounding the early Dracula do come from the stage. Like even the look of the cape and the evening clothes kind of harkens back to a mesmerist, a stage hypnotist at around that time, or the way somebody would portray the devil. Would usually be dressed in a manner like that. So they were sort of mirroring that with Lugosi's costume.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
But that's very cool, though. I love I'm loving the some of the insights here. But anyway, so before we'll continue, obviously with Dracula. I don't want to take all the fun out for Kevin when he gets here. But I read a little bit about you, and you actually had quite a career of your own outside of Bram Stoker. You coached an Olympic team.
Yeah, that's it was a very interesting part of my life. The sport was called modern pentathlon. So I'm not sure how much you know about it. But we'll play a little game here, okay, Brian?
Okay.
First of all, my father was a big horseman, and he was actually in charge of the equestrian drug testing at the 1976 Olympic Games in Montreal, where we were living. And when we were involved in drug testing, they needed people who knew how to be around horses, which me and my sisters and my friends all did. We all rode ponies and did jumping and all this cool stuff. But at the Olympics, when a horse would leave the competition site, you needed to then escort that horse to the special stable where a guy from the racetrack would wait for the horse to pee and then collect the pee in the bottle. But you needed, this sort of security guard type guy to make sure that you didn't switch horses. And so that's what we did. So I had front row seats at the 76 Olympics in Montreal and Bromont. And I actually saw these guys riding in this one event called Modern Pentathlon that I'd never heard about. And they couldn't ride very well. And I thought, my God, I'm already better than half these guys out here in doing something that I'm doing. What am I doing being a pee tester? I need to get in the Olympics. So I got inspired and found out that you have to do 4 other sports, pentathlon meaning 5.
Mm-hmm.
So, Brian, here's the quiz for you and maybe your listeners. In 1912, when Baron Pierre de Coubertin originated the modern Olympics, he put in his own sport, and he chose modern pentathlon.
Mm.
The sport was supposed to be the attributes, based on the attributes of the best athlete at the time. So you kind of think of that time frame, 1912.
Okay.
What was the real stud? What was he doing? What did he need to do? And what were the other 4 sports in modern pentathlon? Any idea?
I'm going to guess like fencing may have been one
Yes.
of them. Because sword fighting always.
You're right. So we got the military
popular.
side. You're
Right.
already on track with the horse riding and the sword fighting. So you got 2 out of the 5 so far.
Okay. I'm guessing running just because that's always, running.
Always in there somewhere.
Always in
And
there
of course,
somewhere.
you got to consider if the horse falls down, the guy's got to run, right? So
Exactly.
now he's got a sword, the horse is gone, and he's got to run. What else may he have to do? You're up to 3 of the 5.
Well, let's for fun because what I know about sports in general can fit in like a small cup and still have room left for a beverage.
Well, let's pretend. Let's think beverage.
Javelin.
Let's think liquid.
Okay.
No, let's think military courier. Okay, the guy's got to deliver the message on horseback, fight off the opposition with the sword. The horse goes down, he's got to run. Let's think liquid. Yeah, he's got to get across the river or the lake to deliver the message. He's got to swim.
Okay.
And then the final one, think military, think, that maybe the sword is no good anymore. You've got to do something to get your way into trouble.
Well, that's where I was going to say either javelin for like spear throwing or maybe just boxing.
Well, you're close. There was a weapon involved, but it's shooting, pistol shooting.
Shooting. That's yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know why I didn't. You know what? It's funny. It didn't occur to me shooting in the Olympics, but they do have it, and it's always been part of like what the triathlon.
Well, there's the biathlon, the skiing and the shooting.
Skiing and shooting, yeah.
Which was kind of like our sister sport, they're usually organized by the same people. And that was the same kind of corny story. You got this guy in Scandinavia, and he's got to go and shoot rabbits, in the middle of the winter, so he's got to ski and shoot with his rifle. And that's how that became a sport. And our sport was, the military courier, and, kind of the story goes, before the horse goes down and he's shooting his way across enemy lines to get the message. He's using his gun, but then he runs out of bullets, and he's got to use the sword, and then the horse goes down, he's got to run and swim to deliver the important message. The crazy thing is, and we don't have time to get into stories, but can you just imagine, and I did this sport as an athlete, then as a coach for 12 years, traveling around the world with a 22 caliber pistol. Think of airline security and other things. Not quite as tight as it is nowadays, but it was a nightmare.
No, nowadays it would have to travel separately in its own case, be all locked up and all that.
But they've gotten smart now. For that reason, they now use simply laser pistols. The pistols are similar to what I shot, which was 22 firearm, which could kill somebody. Now it's just like going into the mall, those little playgrounds, and playing laser tag. You shoot with the red light.
Nice.
Nothing happens. And apparently, though, my friends tell me, you still can't take it on board an airplane because you're going to freak out TSA if you show up with your laser pistol on an airplane. But it's got to be underneath the airline. But at least you don't have to declare them and send all these, the serial numbers, and sometimes even going into Eastern Bloc countries, we had to bribe the guys at the doorway with a bottle of cognac that you pick up at the duty free to say, look the other way, we've got 4 guns in these bags. It was a nightmare. But yeah, that was I did the sport for Canada. I competed a couple of world championships. I made the 1980 Olympic team for Canada, but then Canada followed a lot of other countries in the boycott of the Moscow Olympics, which sort of sucked. And then I got a real job as a teacher and a coach, and I tried to keep it going, but I just wasn't able to devote enough time. And then I just turned that into being a coach of modern pentathlon, and I ended up coaching the Canadian ladies team for 5 years. And in one of those years, we won a world championship, and I got the job to take the Canadian men's team to the 88 Olympics in Seoul, Korea. And then I got married and said enough of traveling around the world like a hobo vagabond in amateur sport, which it's fun, but it's not glamorous, and got into Dracula. So that's the short story there.
There we go. Yeah, and that leads perfectly. When you were teaching, you were approached about the idea of the undead, or how? Tell us about how that came about.
Brian, can you hear me? First of all, wait, guys, hello?
Yes, Kevin.
Can you hear me? Oh, thank God, you can finally hear me.
Yes, you're very loud, but we can hear you.
I'm loud?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I'll try to tone my voice down. That's about all I can do.
Dacre, can you hear him?
Yeah, Kevin, it's Dacre. I can hear you just fine. How's my level, volume level for you, Kevin?
You sound pretty good for me.
Good. I'm far away from you. I'm in South Carolina, so I guess we're speaking just the right level.
Yeah,
we're about 10 minutes away on the highway at the moment. We finally got through the traffic.
Oh, excellent. We're saving some of the good stuff for you. So we were just about to. Dacre was about to describe what prompted the writing of the undead.
Yep, which would be one of my first questions. Although first, before you get into that, let me say thank you so much for joining.
Oh, you're welcome. This is a lot of fun and great to be a part of it. And interesting that modern technology can put us on a crowded highway somewhere, as well as a studio and then my office in South Carolina. So this is wonderful.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. So please let us know, how did you get into writing The Undead?
Yeah, it's again, because of modern forms of communication. It turns out that Ian Holt, who was a screenwriter who had done a little bit of work, was interested in taking a story that he had worked on with a guy called Alexander Gallant that never went anywhere, and it was like, let's try to turn this into a novel, but let's really do something cool and see if we can't get a member of the Stoker family involved. And so Ian hunted me down on the internet, and I guess he had said he had tried to get a hold of other Stoker members, and my uncle, older gentleman in his 80s, didn't want anything to do with it. So he said, well, maybe call Dacre or something. And so they did. And he pitched this idea of, I've got a story, and it's sort of this idea of a sympathetic version of Dracula, Vlad Dracula. He said everybody now has associated Bram Stoker's Count Dracula, years later, and really since the '92 Coppola movie, that creature is really Vlad Dracula.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I want this guy to be able to tell his side of the story. He's not so much turned into, a little lovey-dovey guy, but, and you got to realize Ian is from the Bronx, and everybody, has got to tell your side of the story. Everything's an argument. And so he wanted Vlad to be able to tell his side of the story. And so I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Let me see what you got. And he gave me some rough outlines. And I said, if I'm not a writer and I'm really not too much into this, give me about a year to get up to speed, talk to some of my cousins, find out what we've got on Bram Stoker. Let me go look at the Dracula notes. So I did a lot of research because I wanted to kind of hold up my end on this project. I didn't want to just, give a Stoker name away to some guys I don't know and cross my fingers they come up with a good product. So, it turned out that, we ended up writing different parts and giving some outlines of this is what Bram would say in this situation. This is how the whole thing should work. I became kind of the guy like I was, a school teacher and a coach that outlines a yearly plan. I sort of create the story plan, where we want this thing to start, some of the cool action between, how we want this thing to end. And we got the service of some good editors to help us, and it took us about 5 years, but we ended up putting, a fairly original story together. And Alexander Gallant was a great help in his historical research, because one of the things Bram did in his novel, which we needed to do if we were going to, call it a continuation of the story, is make sure it's, historically accurate, which is one of the things Bram did, made that story very realistic in Dracula. We need to make Dracula the Undead, kind of somewhat similar, with real people, real places, the street, the different street directions, all these things in the different towns were correct. And Alex was very helpful to place us in those areas to give the story that sense of realism. And it turned out to be,
I've actually read the book.
Success. Yeah. What'd you think?
Not a long time when it first came out. I know it's a little controversial for making him sympathetic, but I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And
we certainly did. We ticked off some people with that. Look, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, it's a very different take than Bram's book, of course, but different isn't necessarily a bad thing. I like the twist of who the other. I don't necessarily want to say it, because even as old as the book is, there are probably people out there listening that haven't read it. But who the other vampire is, I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah.
I've had a fascination with Dracula, both as a novel and the historical figure, all my life. So, of course,
well, mine hasn't been all my life.
Family approved, I had to get it.
it's I've become quite interested in Vlad Dracula III since I'm now about 3 years into leading tours over to Romania and learning more about him by local experts and historians. It is quite interesting, but sometimes I feel a little bit, sort of not nervous about the reaction, but sometimes things get blown out of proportion when I go to Romania and people say, "Oh, all you Westerners have just turned our national hero into a Hollywood pop icon, and he was really a hero for fighting the Ottomans, and you've got him turning bloodsuckers and all this stuff." And it's like,
yeah, they take him very seriously. I've understood.
and rightfully so. The guy did, at the time, he did what he had to do with what he had. But there's also a lot of people over there that are very opportunistic and have a great time dressing up and capitalizing on giving tours and Brand Castle and other castles, having a hell of a good party,
Sure.
sensationalizing what we have done with their national hero too.
Well, yeah, the reality is they need the income.
It definitely does help. Yeah. Brand Castle.
I'm not hyper interested in seeing Brand just because I'm aware of how much of that's just Hollywood hype, as it were. I want to go see pornography and snag off the actual things he had handed. But still, to be able to go over there, and as you say, I mean, sure, you get that reaction of the West just sensationalizes the whole thing. I think particularly for you, since your family is the one who put him on the map, as it were.
I'm picking up only about half of what you're saying, unfortunately, Kevin. But you're right. I sort of feel like the family did put the guy on the map. At least Bram did. And so what I try to do is, and it's kind of a funny story. I was invited. One of the counties right in the middle of the country, where the city of Sighișoara is. It's the birthplace of Vlad. There was a tourist branding conference there a couple of years ago, and they flew me over, took care of me for a week, and asked me to give a presentation, which was all of about 20 minutes. But it was, what do you think we should do to do a better job with our tourism? And I kind of gave them this off-the-cuff sort of remark that really has stuck well. And I said, well, you've got to be responsible about your vampire tourism. I said, responsible vampire tourism sets the stage to tell the story correctly. And if you do it right, you'll get twice as much tourism. You'll get the Count Dracula tourism, and you'll get the Vlad Dracula tourism.
Yeah.
And I said, these streams shall not cross. But when they do cross, explain the difference, of the count that Bram Stoker made. Where in the country did the story take place, which is really quite different than where Vlad Dracula did his ruling and his impaling and so on. I said, the other thing you guys need to do, which I don't know what you guys think about this, I'd love for you to tell me this, is the mythologies that Bram Stoker read about when he was doing his research. All of this interesting superstitions and mythologies generated in this part of the country. This Emily Gerard book called Land Beyond the Forest, a specific essay called Transylvanian Superstitions was involved in his notes. It's almost like they ignore it or they're a little embarrassed about it. But to me, it's the genesis of this incredible kind of realism that's inserted into this, this fictional story.
Yeah.
But it's real beliefs and real worries. And we don't hear about it much. You have to dig. So what do you guys think about kind of learn more about those, where the origins of those superstitions are, put it in perspective?
I'm all about that.
I'm down. It's like, tell me where to show up. I'm down.
Yeah. I'm actually
Actually, guys, give me a second. I'm going to have to drop off here because we're just pulling in, so I'll be there in like a minute or two actually in the studio, so it'll be much better.
Okay.
I stole your seat, Kevin.
Okay.
All right. I'm all about that. I'm actually in the stages of putting together a presentation I do a presentation called Vampires in Folklore, Fiction, and Film.
Oh, cool.
Where I try to break down how we arrived at our modern conception of the vampire versus the very diverse world of folklore that exists out there in all the different countries of the world regarding the vampire. And it's really funny because a lot of, from what I can tell, a lot of Stoker's the things that he put in weren't so much the Eastern European. Like, he took some of the Eastern European elements from Emily Gerard's book, but he also mixed in a lot of Irish and British Isle sort of traditions and legends, like the White Ladies and the sort of the more fae-ish vampires, and gave Count Dracula some of those qualities. So I thought it's a really interesting blend. And I'm working on that.
And you know what was huge? I'd really like to hear one of your presentations sometime. But
I'd love you to be part of. I'd love you to be part of one.
That would be very cool. At the time when Bram was in London, and this is late 1800s, early 1900s. I'm sure you know this, but for the benefit of the listeners, Iceland was a really happening place as far as it was cool to understand about Iceland and learn about their mythology. Hall Caine, who was the guy that Bram dedicated Dracula to, who was a more famous writer at the time than Bram was, had gone to Iceland and written a book there. And so that sort of Norse mythology, Scandinavian stuff was just beginning to be very, 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 very cool and mysterious. But think about geographically. It's a lot closer to England than Eastern European, the area where Transylvania comes from. So that was some really cool, interesting stuff that people were tapping into. And Bram even has that mentioned within Dracula when he has that great famous sort of scene where Dracula is explaining to Harker when he's in the castle about, my family's blood and this is where we all came from, and he mentions Iceland.
Yeah, that's one that people don't remember a lot or pick up on, that Icelandic connection, but it makes sense.
No, it does, and I have to agree with Brian as well. First of all, hello again, now that I'm actually in the studio. So, the folklore, I think a lot of people, because you have this idea you'll get today, it's just fairy tales, it's just mythology. Yeah. Folklore is an important part of our cultural identity and our history. And that goes for Romania and Transylvania as well. Those stories shaped who they are. They shaped their music. They shaped their cultural identity. Dismissing that, even with... I get the embarrassment. And I know how important Vlad the Impaler is to them as a figure.
Yeah.
And, I'm sympathetic with that because I think it was actually... it was pretty brutal, but he wasn't exceptionally so when you compare him to the rest of his time period. But, what he did because he had to do it.
Yeah, he had unbelievable forces against him, and yet he had a country that was very ununified, and so he had to rule in a sort of this heavy-handed way to force all the sort of the boyars to come together and support him. Otherwise, a country ununified would have been just squashed by the Ottomans.
And he didn't have an especially big country. It wasn't like he had a huge army to command, so he had to really make the best of what he had.
And the boyars, for that matter, were sick bastards as well.
Yeah.
They buried his older brother alive.
And you know what's cool, guys, when I go there, and the more I think about this, you guys might need to come on one of these trips and put together sort of some of your listeners, and we all head over there together.
Please.
Yeah, that'd be a dream come true. Let me know. I'll drop.
It would be very cool.
Tell me which organs I need to sell. I'd be I'll go. Going to Romania is one of my lifelong dreams.
The geography of the place leads itself to make you, when you get there, you really understand these isolated villages up in the mountains, how they worked, how Vlad used them, and I'm sure the other rulers before and after Vlad did use them to their advantage, because as the Ottomans were sort of coming over to threaten Austria-Hungary, and the sort of Christendom, they had to go through some really narrow mountain passes. They had really difficult time getting food and things. And so the Wallachians and Transylvanians could, 20 guys, 40 guys could do a really good job at choke points, cutting people off in these passes.
Yeah.
And so it's quite interesting, and you get a much better picture when you get over there and see all this. I just did something, guys, so cool that just a month and a half ago, climbed to the top with a guide and some friends of Mount Israel. Now, this is in the Bukovina region. This is the actual location from Bram's notes, based on his lines of longitude and latitude, that he pinpointed where he wanted his castle Dracula to be, his fictional castle, okay?
Nice.
But it lines up when you figure out the Jonathan Harker ride in the carriage from Klausenberg to Bistrica to the Borgo Pass, gets picked up by Dracula, gets driven around and around in circles, he gets disoriented, and he ends up in his castle. Well, we hiked up this mountain, which was a 2.5-hour hike up, very steep mountain, get up to the top, and then we realized we shouldn't hike back down the steepness that we came up. Somebody could have been badly injured. So it took us 4 hours to walk, the sort of the crest of the mountain and get back down again, which was very cool. But it gave us this really cool feeling of vulnerability, which was, we were sort of looking for. The weather was cloudy, overcast. Remind me, I'll send you a couple of shots.
Please do.
This it's an old volcanic mountain. So here's the hint, guys. The end of Dracula, as Bram wrote it, not sure if you guys have been able to study the Les Klinger book, The Annotated Dracula. But
I have it, yeah. I've been looking it over.
Well, the end of Dracula, before it was edited out, right after the Bowie knife, was thrust into Dracula's heart, a massive volcano erupts. And all the rocks come tumbling down and definitively puts an end to the count. So it's so cool to be up on this mountain, which was an extinct volcano. And the other
this is
cool
the one that
thing,
could have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had to be there for that. That's why Bram placed it there. It was an old volcano. And the other cool thing was, do you remember the references in Dracula, and test your listeners on this too, to the blue flames?
Yes.
Okay? Do you know how that originated in this area? Again, we go back to folklore blending with reality.
I know legends about, and I've actually directly, as a paranormal investigator, I've directly encountered blue flame.
Yeah, weren't they supposed to be like fairy fires or something like that?
Fairy fire or St. Elmo's fire.
To mark treasure.
In the book,
exactly. Now, guys, you know all this stuff. Sometime along the line, and I'm not trying to do your job for you as far as paranormal investigation goes, but folklore usually has its beginnings in some kind of truth. Well, in this part of the country, they had sulfur mines. When a massive volcano erupted, it exposed all this sulfur. Well, you know what happens when you put a match to a rock with sulfur? It burns blue. And the other cool thing in these mountains, in these Carpathian mountains, is they have gold. They have massive deposits of gold. The Dacians, when the original inhabitants were, back in the year 100 before the Romans conquered them, the Romans came in to steal all their gold.
Yeah.
So doesn't this kind of make sense when you look at this mountain that Bram chose? Well, now it did back in Bram's day, but it has this huge, now closed, open pit sulfur mine with all the sulfur around it, as well as gold mining going on. So here's your blue flames leading to treasure. It's all right. It's all right there. You just got to move the clock back 150 years, and you realize why people started that piece of myth and how Bram picked up on that and stuck it in his novel.
Speaking from experience, I can also say, not blue flame on its own like the novel implies, but if you have a flame like a candle flame and the flame turns blue, it's a traditional sign that spirits are present. And I've had an experience on a case where a pure beeswax candle, the flame just suddenly turned blue.
Wow.
Yeah, Kevin's got some great stories about all that sort of fun, otherworldly stuff.
And yeah, I agree with you absolutely. Folklore has a basis in reality, and I mean, some of it falls into my bailiwick of some folklore has a basis in these things are out there, in my opinion. But some of it is just interesting, and just how much of folklore and oral traditions influence, like most of our funeral customs come down to trying to prevent vampires and ghosts and things of that nature.
Sure. Make sure the soul is at rest. That's the basis of all this, is we got to make sure that we do the right things to the body to make sure that this poor guy has a peaceful resting place for eternity.
Yep. And so that the body doesn't get up and come back.
I will say, well, and it's a theory, I have to wonder if Romania might like of mine. I've always had a headcanon idea, because if you look at Vlad's history, he built churches, he built monasteries, he tried to be a Christian guy, although we could debate how successful he was. So him as a vampire, especially as a national hero, doesn't work that well. On the other hand, the name Dracula means son of the dragon. Dracul is the dragon.
Yeah.
I can think of somebody else in the family. Radu was a traitorous bastard. I've always thought about writing like my own fan fiction, where it ultimately, at the end of the story, you realize, no, Radu's borrowed his brother's name, and the one we all think of as Dracula is actually his evil brother, and it was his punishment for committing treason.
Because
do you guys remember that? And it's difficult to pick up because we had to edit it out of Dracula the Undead.
Oh, really?
But Radu was actually the guy that turned Bathory, that saved Bathory. It's a minor part of the story, but there was supposed to be about another 10 more pages, but because of length, it was edited out. But we thought the same thing that you guys are thinking. Radu is actually much more badass.
Yeah.
And in real life, so
and he's underutilized.
Exactly.
So many people don't know who he
there's
is.
an opening, guys. There's an opening there.
There we go. Hey, next time you want to do a book, let me know, and I will be happy to co-author with you.
And
Cool. Well,
hey,
we
if
got
want a weird take on things.
We've got to. I've got to go shortly, but we need to tell your listeners that we are going to do another show, and specifically talk about Dracul, which is my prequel. We can't talk about it right now because it's not coming out till October.
Yes,
but we need a schedule. Yeah, we got to do something in September and really have some fun with this, because I will tell you this: I'm so stoked right now. We've got some really good Goodreads reviews. We've got. Yeah, I use that occasionally. We get some,
yeah, you'd have to.
Yeah, I'm allowed to. Actually, I was trending, and I didn't do it on purpose. The heck was it? It was when I did this Airbnb gig at Grand Castle 2 Halloweens ago.
Oh, wow.
And a reporter said, hey, what are you thinking about? What are you doing here? Why are you hosting this big thing? He says, well, and sorry, guys, don't break out laughing. I said, I've got a stake in the family name and making sure that people know as much about Bram Stoker, the author, as they do about Dracula. So, of course, as newspaper guys do, they've kind of shortened that up, and just take the little sound bites. I've got a stake in Dracula.
Sure.
And that was trending number 2 in the world for about 20 minutes. Behind
it's a great quote.
Bram's story is really interesting in its own right. I absolutely agree. People should be aware of the man behind.
Yeah, and we might be able to talk more about that next time you're on.
We do, because that's the story. We go into great depth. It is Bram Stoker growing up and him writing Dracula, but it's fictionalized. So you get to know the guy.
I'll say flat out, as the official host, you are welcome back on my show any time.
Yeah, no, you've been a great guest.
You've been a phenomenal. I mean, only what I've heard and been able to jump in on, you've been an absolutely phenomenal guest. I have to ask, though, since I know you're running out of time personally, so are vampires real? Just for a little fun.
I say yes, because here's, but I've got to qualify it. Mm-hmm. They are so real in mythology all over the world. If people, and we just touched upon, and I think one of you guys said, there's lots of cultures with it. If people really believe and they have these very long, complicated mourning processes. They can't all be freaking wrong. I mean, everything from China to Iceland and everywhere in between, people have these serious beliefs about the spirits of the dead, unrest, coming out, looking for life. So,
very true.
Okay, we all know that there are people who do the nightclub thing and do the little bit of a thimbleful of blood. They do a little bit of voluntary taking of blood. I've met some of those folks in New Orleans. I've got a good friend who wrote his doctoral thesis on this, and I wanted to meet people, understand it. So I've met some people who really do practice what is called voluntary vampirism. But what I think we're talking about really is the people that have a real belief. And there was this exhumation in Romania in 2003 that was featured on Mysteries of the Museum.
Yeah, saw that one.
No, I'm sorry. There was Mystery Museum, but there was also one
like Expedition
Secrets of the Dead, Vampire Legend.
Okay.
And those people aren't stupid people. They really believe that the way to save this young girl was to dig up the body of this guy whose spirit's coming out and taking her blood. And the belief that they had when they opened up the grave, here was this blood around his shroud, on the guy's mouth, and they took out the heart. As you guys know, they bring it to a crossroads, they burn it, they make this elixir with the ashes, they fed the girl this sort of tea potion with the ashes, and she gets better.
The Arnold solution.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it goes back, 100 years, but this is 2003, and they believed it. So, long-winded answer, yeah, I think that people do believe it, so who am I to say? I don't, just because I don't quite see it or understand it right now in my present consciousness does not mean it doesn't exist.
That's a really good answer.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a real quick story along those lines. Not vampires, but directly related. I had a mentor, Father Joseph Brose, who worked in Center City, Philly. He knew a lot of Haitian immigrants. Had a woman tell him about going to a cemetery in Haiti at night and seeing a zombie ritual. And she later would comment to him, she liked living in the U.S. where the dead don't walk.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
guys,
I'm far enough in my career, I never dismiss anything. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Any other short parting thoughts or questions before I have to jump? And I will love to come back on. And it seriously would be really fun to organize one of these trips to Romania. It's not expensive once we're there, but flying all the way to Romania is not cheap.
Yeah.
But it's great when we get there. So it's been great to have me on it. Any other parting thoughts before I got to jump?
No, just thank you again for giving your time and being
and be in touch. We'll
generous.
set up that.
Yeah,
we'll figure out a way. We'll harvest some organs or something. We'll do this Romanian trip. I've been wanting to do it my entire life, so it's like I'm down.
We'll do a
good.
Kickstarter.
It'd be worth it. You'd love it. It's a wonderful place. The people they love Americans still, so it's a great place to go.
And all the pictures I've seen in the video, it just looks so gorgeous.
Yeah.
It is.
But
yeah,
let's let you go. Thank you again for coming on.
Okay.
You've been a phenomenal guest.
You're most
always welcome here.
Thanks, guys. You have a great evening. And say to your listeners, everybody have a good time.
You too. Good night.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, folks, that was Dacre Stoker.
Yep.
Sadly, I missed a good chunk of that, but I'm going to listen
Dacre.
to it later. Dacre. Oh, I apologize.
Like Acre, yeah.
So Dacre Stoker, now we know how to pronounce it properly.
Exactly.
Author of Dracula the Undead. He also did a travel book, didn't he? Or he contributed to one. And he's got the upcoming Dracul.
Yeah, that
which
looks
is his
really
prequel
good.
Story. We will be having. I'm going to be picking up a copy of that, and we'll have him on towards October when it's coming out.
So one thing I didn't get to was our sponsors.
Oh,
so
good.
we can still do that, and if people want to call in, they can still do that.
Yeah, unfortunately, Dacre's gone, but you can call in and talk to us at least. So sponsors real quick. Let me give out the number in case anybody wants to call.
Yes.
609-807-2492. 609-807-2492. Meanwhile, while anybody gets just calling in that wants to, let's talk one about Audible.
Audible.
So
excellent resource.
We've been talking about audiobooks. Dracula the Undead is on there.
Yes.
You can go to Audible, go to audibletrial.com/paranormale, audibletrial.com/paranormale, and you'll be able to you sign up for a free month. You get a free audiobook. You get his book. You get one of Brian's book. You can get any one of literally thousands more. I just picked up the most complete book of vampire short stories on there. It's like 60 hours of vampire stories from before the publication of Dracula, the stuff that came out in the last couple of years.
Nice.
And here's the thing. The actual audiobook, because looking at it, is 50 credits, or $50. But if you want to get it with the credits, which is the monthly membership, or what you get if you sign up for a free membership, it's 1 credit. So you can get a $50 audiobook for free by going to the link.
I might have to do that.
Yeah, right?
The other one for you guys to keep in mind is internet security is a huge issue these days.
Yes.
Keep in mind, people trying to hack you, people trying to get your private information for identity theft. You might want to consider looking into a virtual private network. One of the best is NordVPN. They have military-grade encryption. It's very reasonably priced. You can get it for 1 to 2 years. You get 30-day money-back guarantee. And the beauty of it is, as well, if you're living in a country like China, if you're living anywhere that puts restrictions on your internet, censors it, you can bypass it using NordVPN. Again, military-grade encryption, unlike other VPNs, they do not save your data which means that if you're doing something you shouldn't, and we here do not condone illegal activity.
Of course not.
But if you're doing something you shouldn't, normally your internet service provider is keeping a record of that, and can give it to the government upon subpoena, or sometimes even set aside illegal, Homeland Security, things like that, and personal security and privacy. That stuff's getting released, and even outside of security. It's going to advertisers and people who are trying to sell you something.
Well, there's data mining companies out there that do that kind of stuff, and
this bypasses that.
Yeah,
even bypasses some. It even has an option for like a better ad blocker on there and stuff on it. The stuff you get through Facebook and all that.
So good stuff.
It's very much worth looking at. The last one to pitch, because it's still going, is if you go to Kickstarter, look up Paranormal Encyclopedia. The link is too complicated for me to read out. But again, Paranormal Encyclopedia on Kickstarter. Please try and support us. We've got a whole bunch of tiers there. You can get T-shirts. You can get
autographed copies
of his books. Although I need to put those up actually.
Yeah.
You can get a chance to suggest a guest. If you want to give enough money, you can even come be a guest on the show for a day, or all the way up to. If you spend I think it's about $500.
Oh,
Brian and I will come out to your convention, and speak.
Sure.
Just keep in mind, we're in New Jersey. If you're going to make us drive more than 2 hours, you're going to have to give us travel expenses. But otherwise, we'll be happy to come.
Yeah.
We've still got a ways to go. I know the first big hurdle there, and I don't have it with me because my fiance is using it currently to set up some other stuff for the show. But we needed a new laptop because I'm doing a new series with Lupus Creepus. We haven't, unfortunately, last week, as many of you may know, we couldn't do it because the tech shorted out. My computer shorted out on us, I'll be honest. As of Tuesday of this week, I have a new, utterly awesome, much better computer, which was a gift from my father. So that side's done. So a huge hurdle we needed to pass is fixed. We're going to be starting new videos, hopefully next week or maybe the week after, depending on... I know Lupus's friends may be listening, and let me just be clear. Lupus is very busy with his actual regular 9-to-5 job. That's what's holding things up. Don't put any pressure on him. He's happy to do it. I'm happy to do it. It's just having the time with his work schedule. It's been really hectic lately. Also, we were supposed to record it this morning. Unfortunately, she had some issues, had to go see her doctor. But next week, Thursday, I'm going to be recording an interview with Virgo Triad, who we had on a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
We're going to be talking particularly about paranormal cons and scams.
Always fun.
Yeah. So we've got about 5 minutes left. Do we have anything else we want to plug?
Well, I mean, if you've got money and you're looking for a good read, please go check out my books online.
They're worth the read. Having read them, they're definitely worth the read.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Also, we may want to promote our Kickstarter.
I already mentioned that.
Did we?
Yeah, you weren't paying attention.
You zoned out while I went through a whole spiel about the Kickstarter. Now I just got a laptop.
Mention it again. Couldn't hurt.
Okay.
What about you, Beth? What have you been up to?
So you can promote it again if you want to. So for Beth's sake, again, remember, if you've got a little bit of spare money, please throw it at the Kickstarter. If you don't have a little bit of spare money, steal it. Or, just share it on your Facebook, share it on your Twitter and your Tumblr and your Instagram, and every other goofy thing you've got out there.
If you're really in desperate need and you really want to read my books, honestly, just contact me. I'll give you like e-copies.
Or again, audibletrial.com.
Yeah, exactly. I want
get
people
a
to read
free
my stuff.
audiobook of his book.
Yeah, the audiobook is really
The
well
show
done.
gets credit for it. I believe you get credit for it.
I get credit for it. Brian Rollins
and it doesn't
gets
cost
credit.
you a penny.
Yeah, it's a really well done book.
What better way to introduce yourself to a new writer than to help out the writer, help out your favorite radio show, because that should be us, and not have to pay for it.
And the producer, yeah.
And this will help the producer too.
Also, if you donate to the Kickstarter, some of your books, some of the prizes are signed books by
Yep,
Brian,
autograph.
so you can have that,
Yep.
and this way you can just rub it in everybody else's face that's missing out.
Yep.
Just rub it right in.
Let's make all your friends envious.
Do it. Be that person.
I mean, I don't have any books, but if you really want it, I'm sure I could send you an autographed something or other.
T-shirts. I mean, we're gonna have posters, T-shirts. I've been
Bumper
working on.
Can we do bumper stickers?
I don't think they have bumper stickers, although there are other sites where you can print custom
We'll look into
bumper
that.
stickers.
But you can get a poster, and we'll be happy to sign that for you. We'll get you a T-shirt.
Oh yeah, yeah. I want to get a big poster anyway for like back.
For back here, yeah.
Yeah, and just have it during the show. Like,
I mean, obviously, for that matter, if you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, again, we have a few minutes left. 609-807-2492, 609-807-2492. If you're not comfortable or unable to call in, I don't have the chats open the way I usually do because of the hecticness of that is today. But feel free to reach out to me on Facebook, the Paranormal Encyclopedia on Facebook. You can tell because of our logo. You can reach out to me on Gmail at kevinm.paranormalencyclopedia@gmail.com.
wait, hold on, we're saved.
kevinm.paranormalencyclopedia@gmail.com. Keep in mind, I am happy to offer advice the best again. I am happy to conduct investigations. I've had people contact me through the show before. There is, if you're wondering, because this is going to come up in the...
Don't contact me.
Don't contact Brian.
I am no help other than to get you
They'll
to
just
Kevin.
put you in touch with me.
Yeah, that's about all I can do.
If you're wondering, and this is something Virgo I am undeniably going to get into next week, but there is no charge for an investigation. If you live, again, if you live more than 2 hours from me, I will probably ask you for gas money.
Which is reasonable.
And if you want, I will happily provide receipts and things of that nature. Which is the reality of, I work 30 hours a week. I don't get paid that much. I can't drive all over the bloody planet as much as I want to. The other reality of that is, if you're in California and you really need help, and
There's probably
you
somebody
don't
in
need
California.
me, I can find you someone in California.
Yeah.
And if your heart's set on me, feel free to buy me a plane ticket. I'll come. But I will be more than happy to set you up to use the various contacts I have to find you someone who can help you in your area that you won't have to pay. In general, that is one of my basic bits of advice if anyone out there is having trouble with the paranormal. One of the first warning signs that the group you're going to is no good. If they want you to pay the money, keep looking.
It's kind of like the same thing with publishers. If
Or any kind of agent.
Yeah, a publisher or agent tells you they need money from you in order to get started. Yeah, they're not above board.
Also, we do have a Twitter, so if you know people who would be interested in anything that we show on any given basis, the handle is, you can look it up as Paranormal Encyclopedia, look for our logo.
Yep.
Or you can put in Inslo, demonology. It's essentially the first part of Encyclopedia.
For that matter, if you're, I mean, give us money, we'll make you a guest is mostly aimed at people who don't. But if you happen to be an author, if you happen to have a TV series or something like that, feel free to reach out to me.
Oh, yeah.
If we consider it something up our alley, we can have you on the show as well.
And if nothing else, please share these videos around.
Yes.
Try to get spread the word if you can do nothing
comment
else.
on them too.
Yeah,
let
comment.
us know what you like. If you like what we're doing, tell us. If you hate what we're doing, tell us that too.
If you think we're a bunch of bumbling idiots, go ahead and tell us.
The only request I make is, criticism is fine. Keep it constructive. If you want to say I'm a giant fat rear end, that's fine. But expect me to delete your comment and move on because.
How can they see it? You're sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I had somebody who I annoyed on another video comment. So you're the fat one, right?
Jesus.
So it's like delete, moving on.
At least they had to ask.
Yeah.
Also, if you're in the nearby area and you do contribute, you can come in.
Oh,
you don't
yes.
have to do it by Skype. You can come in.
Oh, yeah.
If you live in Timbuktu, you'll have to Skype unless you want to fly out here. But
well,
you
there's a
can physically
Timbuktu,
come
New
in.
Jersey, so they can drive.
True,
Well,
true.
There you go.
So if you live on the moon,
Yeah.
you'll have to Skype in.
It's incredibly glamorous here.
Or
The
take rocket
studio, the studio is amazing. You'll want to come in and get the full tour.
And hey, we usually get together for dinner afterwards.
Hey, there
you
you
get
go.
to join us.
Yeah, if you contribute, you could have dinner with us too. That'd be.
I was going to say, for that matter, we can always send an invite to anybody local who's, so anyone who happens to be in the Trenton area of New Jersey, we go to the Broad Street Diner.
Yeah, Broad Street Diner on Broad Street in Trenton.
Hamilton, Trenton area.
Pretty much for when the show's over until usually 10 or 11 at night. Feel free to come by and say hello and hang out with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we walk out at 9, we leave at 11:30.
Yeah. That's when we walk out at night. Sometimes we don't even leave that
Yeah,
quickly.
we're in the parking lot usually for like another hour afterwards.
Because we're nerds, we do that.
And I will say, if you're considering this idea, the food's good and it's inexpensive.
Yeah, it's a really good place. Been trying to get them to actually officially sponsor us, but haven't gotten quite
For
there
that matter,
yet.
all the Kickstarters aside, if you happen to have a business
Yes.
that you would like to advertise on the show, please
Reach out
feel
to
free
us.
to contact us. You see, we do the Nord and the the Audible. Somebody is supposed to be writing us ads for those,
Yeah.
and we'll
And-
tap.
and-
We can tap his rear end to do it for your own business, and we can work something out depending on how many ads you want, how long, and
We have to record them. Yeah.
yeah, we'll just basically record them and play them back. But we'll be happy to read your ad on the show for a reasonable rate. And for that matter, we can get you in touch with our station owner, and you may be able to get larger advertising than just here. Is Greg going to be here tonight?
He's behind. He's waiting for you.
Okay, so since we should wrap up to let them
Yes.
take over, I do want to say make sure to check out Age Out Angels, which will be right here on Hamilton Radio after us. It's a great show. Greg's a great guy. We definitely recommend that.
Yes.
But that's going to do it for tonight. This is Kevin Mears.
Brian McKinley.
Good
And
night.
Beth.
God bless. Sorry, Beth.
Live long and prosper, everybody.
Yep.
Nanu. It seemed like a really good interview that I missed.
Yeah. No, if you watch the first part,
He-
Oh, I intend to.
Brad, you can come in.
I'm rather impressed. I think I did well.
No, I was not concerned in the slightest about your ability to interview